the Tudors Dynasty podcast.
Welcome to This Week in Royal History, where we're exploring the world outside the Tudors with royal history highlights from a variety of centuries. This week, the week of October 9th through the 15th. On Sunday, we mark the 508th wedding anniversary of Princess Mary Tudor to Louis XII of France. Now, Mary was the younger sister of King Henry VIII of England, and on the 9th of October, 1514, she married the 52-year-old King of France, Louis XII. Mary was 18 years old. Mary was Louis's third wife, and he hoped for a son with this marriage, as his first two produced none. Unfortunately, Louis died on the 1st of January, 1515. And they had no children together. Monday brings the birth and 678th birthday remembrance of Mary of Walton, Duchess of Brittany. On the 10th of October, 1344, Mary was born to Edward III of England and Philippa of Hainault. She was one of their younger children and spent her childhood at various palaces throughout England. On the 3rd of July, 1361, Mary married John IV, Duke of Brittany, at Woodstock Palace. John had been in the care of Mary's parents since before she was born, and they were betrothed at her birth, at which time she became Duchess of Brittany. They remained at the English court after marriage, where Mary died in September 1361 at the age of 16. Tuesday marks the death of Louise of Orleans, Queen of the Belgians. But who was she? Louise Marie Therese Charlotte Isabella was born on the 3rd of April, 1812, in the Kingdom of Sicily, as the eldest daughter of Louis Philippe of Orleans and Marie Amalia of the two Sicilies. In 1830, her father would become the last king of France, and Louise held the title Princess of the Royal Blood. On the 9th of August, 1832, Louise married Leopold I, King of the Belgians. She was 22 years old, and he was 44. Leopold had previously been married to Princess Charlotte of Wales, who died in childbirth in 1817. Their wedding consisted of a Catholic ceremony for Louise and a Calvinist one for Leopold. They had 4 children together, including Leopold II of the Belgians and Empress Carlotta of Mexico. Louise was very charitable and helped needy families in Belgium. She died of tuberculosis on the 11th of October, 1850, at 38 years old. Interesting fact, Louise's husband, Leopold, was a maternal uncle to Queen Victoria of the United Kingdom. On Wednesday, we celebrate the most wanted birth of all time, that of a son to Henry VIII and his third wife, Jane Seymour. Their son was named Edward and was born on the 12th of October, 1537. His mother, Jane, died shortly after birth. Edward was raised with the Reformed religion as his base, and when he became king in 1547, his reign saw the transformation of the Church of England into a more Protestant church. When Edward fell ill in early 1553, and it was clear that he would die, there was a great concern that his half-sister Mary would return the country to Catholicism. Therefore, Edward declared that his successor would be his cousin, Lady Jane Grey. Edward died on the 6th of July, 1553, and Jane was queen for only 9 days before Mary deposed her. On Thursday, October 13th, we celebrate the birthday of Claude of France, future Duchess of Brittany and Queen of France. Claude was born on the 13th of October, 1499, to Louis XII of France and Anne of Brittany. Her mother ruled the Duchy of Brittany in her own right, and since she had no sons, Claude would inherit. However, Claude could not succeed her father to the throne of France, since the crown of France can only pass to a male due to Salic law. Her mother negotiated a betrothal between Claude and the future Holy Roman Emperor Charles V, and a marriage contract was signed in 1501. However, in 1505, her father became sick and feared for the strength of the reign of his only successor. He canceled the marriage contract of Claude and Charles and instead turned in favor of Francis, Duke of Valois. This began the long-standing feud between Charles and Francis before either of them even became rulers. When her mother died in 1514, Claude became Duchess of Brittany and married Francis that same year. With this marriage, the Duchess of Brittany would always be tied to the French crown, something her mother did not want to happen. Her father died in 1515, and she became Queen of France. She spent much of her marriage pregnant and had 7 children between 1515 and 1523, although not all lived to adulthood. Claude died on the 20th of July, 1524, at the age of 24, and was buried at St. Denis Basilica in Paris. The reason for her death is debated. Some say it was during childbirth or a miscarriage. Others believe it was exhaustion due to her endless pregnancies. And some think it was due to syphilis given to her by her husband, who had many mistresses. On Friday, we revisit the death of Isabella, Countess of Gloucester, daughter of William Fitzrobert, 2nd Earl of Gloucester, and Housie de Beaumont in 1173. 15 years after her birth, her father died, and she became Countess of Gloucester in her own right. On the 29th of August, 1189, Isabella married John Lackland, son of Henry II of England, at Marlborough Castle. Sometime in 1199, shortly after John became King of England, he annulled his marriage to Isabella, claiming the grounds of consanguinity, since they were half-second cousins through their great-grandfather, Henry I of England. The annulment was confirmed, although Isabella did not agree and lost her lands. The title of Earl of Gloucester then went to Isabella's nephew, but he died in 1213, and the title referred to her. On the 20th of January, 1214, Isabella married Geoffrey Fitzgeoffrey de Mandeville, 2nd Earl of Essex. However, he died in 1216. She then married Hubert de Burgh in September 1217. Isabella died on this day in 1217 at 43 years old, only a month after her third wedding. She was buried at Canterbury Cathedral. And lastly, Saturday, October 15th. The birth of Elizabeth Teresa of Lorraine on the 15th of October happened on a Thursday, the year of her birth, in 1711. But this birthday remembrance lands on a Saturday this year. Why does that matter? Well, it doesn't, but it's kind of cool to think about those things sometimes. Elizabeth Therese was born to Leopold, Duke of Lorraine, and Elizabeth Charlotte d'Orleans. She was the 11th of 15 children. Her mother was the daughter of Philippe I, Duke of Orleans, and Princess Palatine Elizabeth Charlotte, and a niece of Louis XIV of France. Elizabeth Therese, her mother, and 2 of her sisters were present at the coronation of Louis XV in 1722. She was considered a bride for Louis, but his prime minister forbade it, as the House of Lorraine and the House of Habsburg were closely related, and it would have upset the French nobles. Instead, Elizabeth Therese married Charles Emanuel III of Sardinia on the 1st of April, 1737. They were half first cousins. They had 3 children, but only their youngest son lived to adulthood. Elizabeth Therese died on the 3rd of July, 1741, at the age of 29, of puerperal fever after childbirth. And that concludes this week in royal history. I hope you learned a little, and now you continue your journey to discover more. Until next week, I'm Rebecca Larson. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Tudors Dynasty podcast. You can follow and support the Tudors Dynasty podcast on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Patreon @Tudors Dynasty.